So again, thank you all for being here. I've got a little bit of challenges going on this morning because they decided to resurface the roads right outside of my window. And so I'm trying to minimize the noise, but it's not something that I really have a lot of control over. So we'll just see how things go. But that's life, isn't it? And so today we're going to be talking about self-sabotage, which is something that I think we all do. And so if we're real with each other, we can ask ourselves, just how many times have you said, I know what to do, I just don't do it? And if that hits close to home, you know you're not alone. Today, I want to show you why that pattern keeps showing up and what you can do differently starting right now. So if we haven't met yet, I'm Kelli Nelson. I'm an author and holistic lifestyle coach, and this is week 4 of our 10-part series, Start Where You Are, 10 Steps to Reset for Real Life. This series isn't about chasing perfection or adding something more to your plate. It's about creating a real life wellness lifestyle, one that supports your body, mind, and spirit without burning you out. Every week builds on the last. So if this is your first time joining us, let me bring you up to speed because the last 3 sessions have laid the foundation for everything we're diving into today. So in week 1, we talked about what it actually means to create a holistic lifestyle that supports wellness in every area: physical, emotional, mental, and even spiritual. We looked at how your habits, behaviors, and environment and mindset all work together to either support or sabotage your well-being. We introduced the science of habit formation, understanding the cue, routine, reward loop. And we peeked into the blue zones where people live longer and healthier, not because they try harder, but because their daily environment makes wellness a natural default. And we started asking powerful questions like, are my routines supporting me, or am I just surviving on autopilot? In week 2, we tackled one of the biggest myths in wellness, which is willpower. We explored the science behind why motivation fades and why relying on willpower alone sets you up to fail. We talked about dopamine depletion and how your nervous system reacts when your life feels overwhelming and out of sync. We explored the difference between trying to push through versus setting yourself up with gentle, supportive structure, and how environments like the blue zones thrive because the structure is already built in. And last week, in week 3, we looked at sleep, not just how much you get, but how your body feels when it wakes up. We broke down the biology of midlife sleep disruption, hormones, blood sugar, cortisol, inflammation, and how poor sleep creates a ripple effect that touches everything: your mood, your memory, your energy, and even your relationships. And most importantly, we talked about the power of ritual over routine and how simple, intentional shifts can retrain your nervous system to feel safe enough to rest. So if you've missed any of those sessions, I just want to say they weren't one-off tips. Each one was a building block. And today we're adding the next layer. So let's start with something most wellness programs never talk about, at least not in a way that actually helps, and that's self-sabotage. You might have heard the word before, but let's be honest, most of us don't even realize when we're doing it. It's saying things like, I'll start Monday again. It's reaching for snacks when you're not hungry, but just done for the day. It's staying up too late, scrolling or numbing out because you can't quite settle. It's making a plan to walk, to eat better, to drink more water, and then watching that plan quietly unravel a few days later. It's not that you don't care, and it's not that you're lazy. It's that something inside you is pulling the emergency brake and you don't know why. And when it keeps happening, you start to think, I just can't stick with anything. What's wrong with me? Why do I keep getting in my own way? Sound familiar? I know it does to me. It's my life. But take a breath, my friend, because you're not alone. This isn't about weakness or lack of discipline. This is about what happens when you're trying to make healthy changes inside a life that's constantly working against you. Now, let's be real. You didn't show up today because you're curious about holistic wellness. You're here because you've tried everything. You've done the diets, you've joined the gyms, you've downloaded the apps and followed the checklists, and nothing stuck. You still feel uncomfortable in your body. You're overwhelmed, you're stressed, you're tired of pouring time and energy into things that don't work. And you're starting to wonder if maybe you're the problem, but you're not. The real problem is you've been taught to change your habits in a world that never taught you to change your life. In week 1 of this series, we looked at the blue zones, those rare places in the world where people live longer, healthier, more connected lives. And the secret is that it's not about stricter routines. It's not more discipline. It's not obsessing over food or fitness. They simply live in a way that supports well-being by default. Their lifestyle makes healthy choices feel normal. They walk because walking is built into their day. They rest because their culture honors rhythm. They eat nourishing meals because real food is what's available, and they eat it slowly in community. They have purpose. They feel connected. They're not grinding through life on their own. What they've created is a system that supports wellness without relying on willpower. And here's what I want you to hear. You can't build a sustainable life inside a system that's tearing you down. That's what fad diets and fitness challenges don't account for. They hand you a plan, but they ignore the real life stress, the emotional weight, and the wiring that pulls you back into old patterns. So today, we're not just talking about habits, we're talking about what drives them. Because underneath every failed routine or broken promise to yourself, there's usually an emotional pattern running the show. You start the week strong, and by Thursday, you're skipping meals, stress snacking, or hiding in the pantry. You say yes when you want to say no. You push through exhaustion until your body forces you to stop. That's not a lack of willpower. That's your nervous system doing what it was trained to do. Avoid discomfort, seek relief, and return to familiar patterns. So today we're going to unpack what self-sabotage really is and what it isn't. Why your brain and body keep reverting to patterns that no longer serve you, and what you can do to begin shifting those responses with compassion, not criticism. Because the truth is, you're not failing, you're reacting. And when we start to understand the difference, that's when everything begins to change. So let's talk about what's actually happening in your brain when you make a plan and then abandon it. Most of us think we're just not trying hard enough, that if we had more willpower, more discipline, we'd follow through. But that's not how the brain works. When you're under stress or even just mentally overloaded, your brain does something completely natural. It defaults to whatever feels familiar and safe. And here's how it works. The part of your brain that handles logic and long-term thinking is called the prefrontal cortex. The part that handles fear, stress, and survival is the amygdala. And the moment you feel overwhelmed, emotionally, physically, or mentally, your amygdala takes over. This is often called an emotional hijack. And when it happens, your brain is thinking about what's best for you in the long run. It isn't thinking, excuse me, it isn't thinking about what is best for you in the long run. It's actually thinking about what will make this moment feel less uncomfortable. That's why you reach for the food. You cancel the walk. You pour the drink. You shut down, scroll, snap, or numb out. It's not that you're choosing failure. It's that your nervous system is reacting in the only way it knows how: protect, soothe, and survive. So think about this. Every time you react a certain way to stress, whether it's zoning out, cleaning obsessively, overcommitting, eating emotionally, whatever is your way, you're reinforcing a neural pathway. Over time, those pathways become the default, not because they're helpful, not because you like them, but because they're familiar. Psychiatrist Bruce Perry put it this way: patterned, repetitive experience is how the brain wires and rewires. So if you've spent years avoiding rest because it felt lazy, or saying yes because you didn't want to disappoint someone, or filling every quiet moment with food, noise, or distraction, then guess what? Your brain has learned this is what we do to feel safe, even if it's not actually helping you. So, what does this mean for change? It means that your habits don't exist in isolation. They're part of a much bigger system, one that includes your nervous system, your emotional history, and your environment. And unless we shift the emotional patterns driving your choices, no new habit is going to stick. This is why so many women feel like they're stuck in a loop. You start strong, you hit a wall, you beat yourself up, you try harder, you burn out, you start over. And every time that cycle repeats, it chips away at your confidence a little bit more. But now that you know what's happening, you can stop blaming yourself, because this isn't about being weak. It's about being wired for survival in a world that demands performance. So now that you understand what's happening in your brain, when you fall off track, let's go a little bit deeper with this, because these responses, these moments of sabotage or shutdown, don't come out of nowhere. They're rooted in real experiences, real beliefs, and real emotional wiring. And they almost always fall into one or more of these three categories. The first category is insecurity and not enoughness. Many of us grew up believing that we had to earn our worth. We were praised for being helpful, hardworking, self-sacrificing, not for resting, not for setting boundaries, not for saying, this is what I need. So now, as adults, when we finally try to take care of ourselves, it feels wrong. We feel guilty for slowing down. We feel indulgent for saying no. We feel selfish for putting our own health first. And so we self-sabotage, not consciously, but because deep down we're carrying the belief, I don't deserve this yet. I have to prove myself first. I'll rest when everything else is done. And the result is you abandon your own needs before anyone else even has a chance to. The second is modeled behavior. We didn't just inherit eye color and body type, we inherited patterns. So think about how your parents or caregivers handled stress, rest, food, emotion, or boundaries. Did they work until they collapsed? Eating standing up or in front of the TV? Did they avoid difficult conversations, reward busyness, and dismiss rest? Did they numb out with food, alcohol, or TV? Did they try to keep the peace at all costs, even at their own expense? If so, those behaviors didn't just happen to you. They were modeled, they were normalized, and eventually they were repeated. not because they were the best options, but because they were the only ones you saw. And this is where compassion comes in, because most of them were doing the best they could. They didn't know any different. They just were trying to survive, just like we all are. But now you get to decide, does this pattern still serve me, or is it time to unlearn it? The third is the fear of change, even the good kind. This one surprises people the most, but your brain isn't wired for growth. It's wired for familiarity. Even if what's familiar is chaotic, stressful, or unsatisfying, it's still predictable. And for your nervous system, predictable feels safe. That's why even positive changes like eating better, setting boundaries, or prioritizing sleep can trigger resistance. Not because you're afraid of success, but because success requires change and change feels uncertain. What if I can't keep it up? What if people don't support me? What if this version of me doesn't fit the life that I've built? And that fear, quiet as it may be, can pull you right back into old behaviors. So the bottom line, self-sabotage is never random. It's always rooted in something deeper, a belief, a memory, a pattern, or a fear. And when you name the root, you take away its power. Because once you see that it's not you working against your progress, it's a protective system trying to keep you safe, now you can start building a new system, one that's actually designed to support the life you want. So let's make this real a little bit. You might not walk around saying, I'm self-sabotaging today, but chances are it's showing up in your life in small, consistent ways. It shows up in my life every single day. But here are a few of the most common patterns I see in women I work with. See if any of these sound familiar. First one is, I start strong and then I quit. You've got the new planner, the grocery list, the color-coded meal plan. Sunday feels amazing. You're finally doing it. But by Thursday, you're overwhelmed. You're grabbing whatever's easy and wondering how you lost the momentum so fast. So you tell yourself, I just need to try harder next time. But what's really happening is this. You're starting from a place of pressure, not sustainability. And when life gets loud, and it does, sorry, I just got distracted with this, excuse me. So when life gets loud, and it always does, your nervous system pulls you back to what feels familiar. That's not a failure, it's a flag, a signal that your system is maxed out and the plan you made didn't leave room for real life. The second thing is, I can't say no. You want to eat better, move more, prioritize your sleep, but your calendar is packed with commitments that don't leave space for you. You say yes to the extra shift, the dinner plans, the last minute favor, even when you feel resentful, exhausted, or behind on your own needs. Why? Because saying no feels uncomfortable. It feels like letting someone down. And deep down, you've linked your value to being dependable, even if it costs you your health. So this isn't about time management. It's about emotional wiring that says, my needs come last. The third is, I numb at night. The house is finally quiet, the day is finally over, and instead of unwinding in a way that actually feels good, you scroll, you snack, you pour a drink, you start another episode. And even though you know it's not what your body needs, you do it anyway. Why? Because your nervous system is still activated. It's been in go mode all day long, and it never got the signal that it's safe to rest. We talked about this some last week. So you reach what gives you immediate relief, even if it leaves you feeling worse than the next day. This isn't about poor choices. It's about not having a rhythm that supports true restoration. So here's the point. These aren't character flaws. They're copying strategies. At one point, they helped you get through something, but now they're keeping you stuck. And the first step toward real change isn't more effort or more rules, it's awareness. Because once you see the pattern, you can begin to shift it one choice at a time. So let's step back again for a minute because we've been talking about your internal patterns. It's also important to acknowledge the external culture that helped create them. We live in a society that is constantly judging your body, your productivity, your parenting, your food choices, your boundaries or lack thereof, even how you age. From Instagram to waiting rooms to family gatherings, the message is clear. You're not doing enough. You're not disciplined enough. You're not enough, period. So we internalize it. We start judging ourselves. We try to shrink, to hustle, to overachieve our way to being good enough. And when we finally do try to change something, it's often from a place of shame or comparison, not care. But now let's look at the blue zones again. These are places where people live well into their 90s and 100s, not with perfect routines, but with peaceful, purposeful lives. And one of the biggest differences, there's less judgment and more respect. In these cultures, aging is honored, not hidden. Women are valued for their wisdom, not their waistlines. Community is woven into everyday life, so no one feels like they have to do it all alone. Rest isn't shameful, it's expected. Nourishment isn't tracked or logged, it's shared, enjoyed, and part of the daily rhythm. There's no gold star for burnout, no badge for self-neglect, and no moral value assigned to your food, your shape, or your to-do list. That shift from judgment to respect, from isolation to community, isn't just cultural, it's protective. It creates an environment where nervous systems can relax, where wellness isn't forced, and where people thrive because they're supported, not scrutinized. So, what can we do? We don't live in Sardinia or Okinawa, but we can start to unlearn the judgment we've absorbed. We can start to notice the voice in our head that echoes society's expectations and replace it with one rooted in kindness, not criticism. And we can begin to create our own blue zone, not a perfect life, but a life designed to support our real needs in our real world. And that's what we're doing here. That's why this series matters. And that's what we're going to build, one small shift at a time. So what we've talked about today, emotional patterns, self-sabotage, that quiet unraveling that happens even when your intentions are strong, it's not random. It's deeply connected to the things we've been exploring from the very beginning of this series. In week 1, we looked at the building blocks of a holistic lifestyle. We talked about how your habits, behaviors, environment, and mindset all work together to shape the life you're living now. And when you start to reflect on those things, not just what you do, but where those patterns come from, you might begin to see something you hadn't noticed before. You might realize that the way you respond to stress looks a lot like what your mom did, or that your need to overachieve was planted early, maybe when someone made you feel like you had to earn love or attention, or that your idea of normal is rooted in a culture that praises burnout and punishes rest. And that's not your fault. It's the water we've all been swimming in. In week 2, we took that further. We talked about how our society teaches us to rely on willpower as if discipline is all you need. But willpower isn't endless, it runs out. And when it does, most of us don't question the system. We blame ourselves. We feel like we've failed. We start over and we carry that shame into the next round, a little more defeated than before. But that cycle doesn't mean you're broken. It means the system is. And then in week 3, we introduced something softer. We explored the difference between routines and rituals. Routines are automatic. Rituals are intentional. Rituals help us reconnect with who we are and how we want to feel. But here's the truth. You can't fully show up to a ritual, whether it's a peaceful morning, an evening stretch, or even a mindful meal, if a little voice inside you is whispering, this will never work. That inner critic, that doubt, that's another layer of sabotage. And it's not just about what you do, it's about what you believe while you're doing it. So again, that's where the blue zones are different, because in the blue zones, you don't see that same struggle. People aren't pushing themselves to earn rest or counting calories to feel in control. They're not running on willpower and fighting guilt when they slow down. And they don't second guess every bite of food or feel ashamed for saying no, because the culture itself supports well-being. There's rhythm, there's purpose, there's community, and maybe most importantly, there's respect for themselves, for each other, for the natural flow of life. No one's watching your plate. No one's tallying your steps. No one's measuring your worth by how busy you are. And because there's less judgment and more connection, there's also less self-sabotage, because the environment doesn't create the conditions for it to thrive. And that's what we're working toward here. Not just new habits, not just better routines, but a lifestyle, a personal blue zone designed to support the life you actually want to live. One that's built on alignment, not anxiety, on nourishment, not punishment, on respect, not judgment. Now, I'm sure you're thinking by now, that sounds amazing, but I don't live in a blue zone. And I feel you. It'd be wonderful to live in a blue zone, but we don't. You're right. You live in the real world with noise, pressure, and people who need you. You're navigating the weight of responsibility, the pace of modern life, and a culture that rarely encourages you to slow down or check in with yourself. So trying to replicate a blue zone lifestyle, perfect routines, communal meals, long afternoon walks, that's not just unrealistic. It's another setup for failure. But here's the good news. We don't have to replicate the blue zones to learn from them. What we can do is take what works, rhythm, connection, nourishment, intention, and begin to integrate it into our lives in small, meaningful ways. So if you've been here since week 1, you've already started. You've begun paying closer attention to the way your life is set up, how your habits, behaviors, environment, and mindset have shaped your days without you even realizing it. You've started to notice the autopilot patterns, that what drains you, what distracts you, and what no longer serves the woman you're becoming. You've explored the role of willpower, and you've realized it's not the problem, that it's that your life wasn't built to support you when willpower runs out, and it always does. You've started to shift from rigid routines to grounding rituals, little moments that aren't just about what you're doing, but how you're being while doing it. And today we've peeled back another layer. You're beginning to see how your emotional patterns, the reactions, the impulses, the inner critic have been shaped over time. They're not flaws, they're learned responses. And now you're learning how to respond differently. This won't happen overnight because the stories that you've been living, they've been rehearsed for decades. And here's the truth. The fact that you're here today, still curious, still trying, still willing to look within, that tells me something powerful. You're ready to stop surviving and start shifting. So let's take the next step. Here are 5 small intentional actions that you can begin today, designed to help you interrupt those old emotional patterns and start building something that feels more supportive, more sustainable, and more like the life you've been craving. These next steps aren't about doing more, they're about interrupting the old emotional loops and beginning to replace them with grounded, nourishing patterns that actually support your real life. This is how we begin to rewire those survival-based responses, one small choice at a time. So the first step is to name your default pattern. Start by noticing what you tend to do when things feel heavy or uncomfortable. Do you shut down, snap at someone, numb out with food, scrolling, or busyness? Just notice without judgment. This isn't about fixing anything yet. It's just about awareness. Because once you can see your pattern, you have the power to shift it. Second step is ask, what do I actually need right now? Every reactive behavior is trying to soothe something underneath. So when the craving hits or the frustration boils over, pause for a minute and ask yourself, what am I really needing in this moment? Is it rest, reassurance, connection, maybe just a moment to breathe? When you meet the real need, the copying behavior starts to lose its grip. Number 3 is anchor a reset ritual. This is your nervous system's invitation to settle. It can be simple. A hand on your heart, a slow, steady breath, a phrase like, I'm okay, I'm allowed to pause. These small signals help shift you out of emotional reactivity and back into presence. It's not about doing it perfectly, it's about creating a new default, one that helps you respond instead of react. Number 4 is start a ripple, not a rule. This isn't about building the perfect routine. It's about finding one small shift that feels possible and letting that shift ripple outward. Think about things like putting your phone in a drawer after dinner, or drinking water before your first cup of coffee, or stepping outside between meetings, or sitting down to eat instead of eating on the go. Tiny choices, repeated consistently, create a rhythm that supports the life you actually want to live. And number 5 is visualize the life you're moving toward. Now, this one might surprise you but it's backed by science. Your brain responds more strongly to emotion than logic. That's why your amygdala, your brain's threat center, can hijack your plans in a moment of stress. It's reacting to feeling, not facts. But here's what's powerful. When you take a moment to visualize what you want, not what you fear, but what you're working toward, you shift your nervous system from fear to hope. Instead of imagining failure, you imagine fulfillment. Instead of preparing for rejection, you prepare for rest, ease, confidence, and connection. And your amygdala, it softens, it settles, it hears, we're safe now. It's okay. That's not fluff, that's neurological rehearsal. So it takes 30 seconds each day, right before bed, or first thing in the morning to close your eyes and see, what does it look like when your life supports you? What does it feel like when you're no longer at war with your habits or your body? Let your nervous system experience that version of you, because the more you can feel it, the more your brain begins to believe it, and the more naturally you'll start to move toward it. So these 5 action steps that you've just learned, they're not just good ideas. They are really the first essential moves in retraining your brain's response to stress, exhaustion, and self-sabotage. This is how we begin to disrupt the cycle, not by doing more, but by creating systems that gently shift you towards something sustainable, supportive, and real. And while the blue zone cultures live in that kind of environment, the truth is we don't. But that doesn't mean we can't start building it. When you layer structure, community, and nervous system support into your life, you start to move in rhythm with what your body, mind, and spirit actually need. And that's what changes everything. So, what if instead of trying to push through on your own, though, you had a clear, personalized strategy to help you shift from burnout to balance? What if your habits started to feel natural, not forced, because they were supported by your real life? That's what I help my clients do every day. And it all begins with one simple conversation. And that is a free strategy call that I'm offering today. This is not a sales call. It's a real, honest conversation about you. On the call, we'll uncover the patterns that are keeping you stuck, even if they're subtle. Clarify what holistic lifestyle actually looks like for you, and we'll map out your next steps so you stop guessing and start building momentum that lasts. You'll walk away with clarity, direction, and a deeper understanding of how to reset your lifestyle without starting over again and again. So the question now is now, if not now, when? You've waited for the right time. You've restarted on more Mondays than you can count. You've done the diets, the downloads, the checklists. Let's try something different. Let's build a system that supports you, not one that you have to fight your way through. I'll drop the link in the comments so you can schedule your free call. Take the next step, not someday, today, because you don't have to keep doing this alone. Let's figure it out together. And I will get that link in the chat. Well, I want to thank you all for joining me today. This has been a really challenging one because if you tuned in late, you're not aware, but I've got heavy equipment going on right outside my window right now, and I hope the noise hasn't disrupted. Um, but it's definitely been a challenge for me to stay on task and keep my thoughts together, but we just keep doing it, right? We just keep going. So anyway, thank you again. And I will get a recap of this out in the email. And next week, we'll meet back here again for another topic. So thank you so much. Have a beautiful day. And I hope to see you next week.